The world had not yet stopped talking about the first message from the Galactic Empire when the second wave came. This time, there was no delay, no weeks of waiting, no time to breathe. Screens across the planet flickered at once in homes, in offices, in crowded squares, even in secret bunkers, hidden deep underground. The same broadcast lit up as if the aliens had placed invisible hands on every wire and signal. Humans had the illusion of control over their networks, but the Empire shattered that illusion. With ease, they had reached into the beating heart of human communication and taken it over. The broadcast began with silence. Then the stars filled the screens, swirling like rivers of light. Then the image sharpened. Alien figures stood tall. In the vast hall, their robes gleamed silver, their crowns shimmered, their faces were long and stern eyes like dark pools, burning with cold authority. One stepped forward taller than the rest, his hands raised in a gesture meant to inspire awe. His voice came sharp, clear, and in perfect translation. "People of Earth, hear your masters. We are the empire of 1,000 worlds. We are the rulers of time and space. Your destiny is now ours. Kneel and you will be spared. Resist and you will be erased." The words rolled across the globe like thunder in Moscow. The Kremlin fell silent in Washington. Generals leaned forward in Beijing. Ministers whispered in fear across deserts, across oceans, across mountains. Humanity watched, united by the same moment. The aliens had revealed themselves. They had shown their face. Their arrogance was visible in every detail. They stood as if they had never been challenged, their crowns heavy with authority, their robes stitched with pride. But it was that pride that betrayed them to human eyes. For a long moment, Earth was quiet. Then the first laugh broke through, not from a leader or a general, but from an old man in a bar. He laughed, and his laugh was caught on camera and streamed live. Then a woman watching on her phone giggled. Then a whole crowd chuckled, and within minutes the silence of Earth was shattered by laughter. Not nervous laughter, not weak, but full, powerful, rolling waves of human amusement. The Empire had staged a show of dominance, and it had turned into the greatest comedy event in history. News anchors tried to remain serious, but they cracked one by one. One reporter burst out laughing so hard he fell from his chair. Another wiped tears from her eyes while trying to read the script. Comedians had material for decades. Memes appeared within seconds. Alien leaders in glittery robes were edited into music videos, into cartoons, into children's shows. Captions appeared, "Bow to our shiny pajamas." Humans created games where players pressed a button to kneel dramatically, and points were given for creativity. The Empire did not understand. They repeated their threats. Their voices rose louder. They spoke of fire from the skies and cities turned to ash, but each word only fueled more mockery. In New York, a crowd gathered in Times Square. Every screen played the alien message. Thousands of people bowed in parody, chanting "Kneel primitives" while laughing in Paris street. Performers dressed as aliens demanded tribute. From passers-by who threw coins of chocolate instead. In Tokyo, young people dressed as the galactic rulers danced in the streets with neon crowns and paper robes. The Empire had hoped to make humanity tremble, but instead, humanity made them ridiculous. Yet, under the laughter, shadows moved. Governments worked in secret. Scientists broke apart the signal, its patterns, its codes. Within the arrogance of the broadcast were details not meant to be seen: star maps, military positions, evidence of systems under imperial rule. The Empire had stretched across the galaxy, crushing resistance for thousands of years. Its power was not a fantasy, its fleets not a joke. And though the people laughed, leaders knew that this was not harmless. Every second the Empire watched and judged. Every second brought humanity closer to the day the skies would darken with alien warships. Inside military bunkers, generals shouted to prepare defenses. Space agencies pushed rockets to readiness. Satellites scanned the heavens for approaching fleets. In hidden labs, scientists tested new weapons, desperate to find even the smallest chance of survival. But the common people continued their mockery. The laughter never stopped, and in some strange way, the laughter became a shield. It was a refusal to give fear room, to grow as long as the Empire was a joke. It could not be a nightmare, and the more the aliens demanded respect, the less they received. On the fifth day, the Empire changed its tone. The broadcast returned. This time showing not words, but destruction cities on other worlds, burning alien species kneeling under whip and flame, alien leaders groveling before the Empire's throne. The message was clear. This is what awaits you. But again, the strategy backfired. Instead of fear, the images became satire. Videos were edited with laugh tracks. Scenes of fire turned into advertisements for barbecues. Aliens kneeling became dance trends on social media. The Galactic Empire's terror campaign became humanity's entertainment. But still there were those who did not laugh. A young scientist in Berlin stared at the images with cold dread. She saw not comedy, but truth. Entire civilizations had fallen, entire peoples erased. The Empire had crushed billions before. Humanity, and it would come again. Laughter would not stop their ships when they arrived, she warned the Council, but her words were drowned in the storm of jokes and memes, her voice small against the roar of laughter. Yet in her lab, she continued, decoding the signals, finding coordinates, tracing the routes of Empire fleets. She knew Earth had little time. The Empire grew frustrated, their voices sharp, their threats cruel. But they did not understand the human spirit. They had studied civilizations. Across the stars, all had trembled before them, all had broken at the first show of power. But humanity was different. Humanity had built history on rebellion against kings, against gods, against tyrants. The Empire demanded obedience and received mockery. For humans, laughter was rebellion, and rebellion was survival. The Emperor himself finally appeared, his face hidden in shadow, his voice like thunder. You dare laugh at the Empire, you dare mock the eternal throne. His rage shook the transmission, but his fury only sparked greater laughter. His dramatic words were clipped into songs, played in nightclubs, remixed into comedy sketches. Entire concerts were held with the Emperor's speech. As the opening act, he declared, "Kneel or be destroyed," and the words became humanity's most popular ringtone. Yet behind the curtain of humor, fear still lurked. Children asked their parents, "Will the aliens come?" Soldiers looked to the sky each night, waiting for lights that were not stars in secret rooms. Leaders argued, should they bow? Should they fight? Could they survive some whispered surrender? But others remembered the laughter and said no, if the Empire could be mocked, it could be beaten. The technician who first heard the signal stayed at his console, his eyes bloodshot. From long nights, he replayed the Emperor's speech, searching for weakness, and he found something strange. The Empire had power, yes, but they also had fragility. Their need for obedience, their hunger for fear, was their weakness. If fear failed, their control slipped. He smiled for the first time. He understood laughter was not just defiance, it was a weapon. So Earth continued to laugh, even as shadows gathered, even as fleets moved in the distance, even as destruction drew closer. Humans did not kneel. They stood together in comedy and in unity. The Empire had spoken with arrogance and found only ridicule. They had broadcast terror and found only humor. The stage was set. The first act of the greatest drama in human history was over, and humanity had written it. Not with blood, but with laughter, but far across the galaxy. In the cold halls of the Empire, the laughter was not forgotten. Alien rulers gathered in fury, their voices rising. The humans must be taught. Their place they must be crushed. Ships were prepared, fleets stirred. The Emperor raised his hand and silence fell. Soon, he said, soon they will not laugh. Soon they will kneel, and in that moment the galaxy trembled, for the Empire moved to strike. And Earth, the laughing world, would face fire from the stars. The skies above Earth were calm blue and endless to the human eye, but hidden beyond sight, something vast moved through the void. The Galactic Empire had grown tired of words. Their broadcasts had failed. Their threats had been turned into jokes, their arrogance mocked across an entire planet. Now they chose a new strategy, not persuasion, not diplomacy, but raw intimidation. Their ships would come close enough to be seen, close enough for humanity to understand what they faced. The first shadow was caught by telescopes in Chile, a strange glimmer at the edge of the atmosphere. Too steady to be a comet, too sharp to be a satellite. Within minutes, radar stations confirmed multiple objects entering orbit. The world governments went silent as feeds from space revealed alien warships, colossal machines of polished metal, stretching like cities turned sideways. Their hulls bristled with weapons, their edges glowing faint with strange energy. Fields, the ships drifted into position above Earth, dark shapes blocking out stars like ancient predators, circling prey. Panic rippled across the planet. Ordinary people froze, staring at their screens. Crowds gathered in squares, looking up, half expecting fire to rain down. But the skies remained clear. The alien vessels simply hung above the world, vast, silent reminders of power in New York. The power grid flickered in Moscow defense systems. Activated in Beijing, jets scrambled into formation, the military of every nation prepared for impact, but the alien ships did not fire. Instead, they began a new broadcast, their voices deep and resonant. Children of Earth, behold your future. Our fleets have come. Your resistance is foolish. You cannot hide from the Empire. Kneel now or perish. The words echoed through cities, through villages, through deserts and oceans, their tone final and merciless. But something unexpected happened again. Silence. For a heartbeat, then laughter rolled across the world, stronger than before. The sight of alien warships should have broken spirits. Instead, it became fuel for mockery. Comedians declared the ships looked like cosmic teapots. Artists painted their images onto cereal boxes. Memes spread across the internet faster than the broadcast itself. One showed the alien fleet with the caption, "Free Wi-Fi coverage everywhere." Another compared their glowing engines to cheap holiday lights. Instead of fear, humanity responded with humor. The Empire grew furious from orbit. The ships released warning shots. Beams of energy lanced out, striking satellites, burning them into dust fragments, streaked across the night sky like falling stars. The destruction was clear, undeniable. Humanity's eyes widened. But once again, the fear twisted into something strange. A late-night host declared the aliens had given Earth free fireworks. Crowds cheered as fragments lit up the heavens. Even acts of violence were mock turned into celebration, the Empire's greatest weapon. Fear was failing again. Yet behind the laughter, soldiers worked feverishly inside bunkers. Generals shouted orders. Fleets were scrambled, secret defense projects accelerated. Humanity knew it was vulnerable. But it also knew one truth. Laughter might not stop weapons, but it could protect the spirit without spirit. There would be no fight in Washington. The president asked his advisors, "Why do they not attack one?" Answered, "Because they expect us to kneel first. They want obedience before destruction." The laughter denies them that. In orbit, the alien commanders grew restless. Their reports carried confusion. Morale among their soldiers faltered. The humans were not reacting as predicted. Other species had collapsed in terror at first contact. They had begged for mercy. These humans mocked instead of bowed. They laughed instead of screamed. The Empire did not know how to respond. For their entire history, they had relied on fear. Fear was their engine. Fear was their shield. And now, for the first time, fear had broken against a wall of humor. The next day, giant holograms shimmered across Earth, projected by alien ships, colossal images of the Emperor himself towering over cities. His shadow cast across oceans, his voice deep and thunderous. Humans, you dare mock us, you dare resist, you are nothing in the face of the eternal throne. Kneel now before it is too late. But even as his massive image loomed over cities, the reaction was the same. People pointed, laughed, children danced in the emperor's shadow, mocking his grand gestures. Someone in London projected a clown nose onto the emperor's hologram. The image spread across the globe. In seconds, humanity laughed together. But beneath the surface, tension grew. The empire had not come simply to entertain themselves. Their fleets were armed, their weapons ready. And if laughter truly weakened their control, it also enraged them. Humans knew destruction would come. The question was when in Berlin, scientists whispered that the empire could wipe out entire cities in minutes. In Tokyo, strategists calculated casualty numbers in secret bases underground. Young soldiers prepared with grim faces. They laughed with their comrades on the surface, but their eyes were heavy with fear. They knew comedy would not stop plasma beams. In the alien flagship, a council gathered. The commanders debated what to do. Some demanded immediate fire burn, a city to ash, show them what fear means. Others argued that destruction might spread the laughter further. If the humans mocked even death, then the empire would face a contagion of rebellion spreading to other species across the stars. But the emperor silenced them with a single command: continue intimidation, break their spirit before breaking their world. And so the empire held its fire, choosing psychological war over physical annihilation. Back on Earth, the broadcasts kept coming, each one more dramatic than the last. Alien warriors marching alien planets, bowing alien monuments towering above enslaved species. Each message meant to crush hope, but instead, every message became material for new jokes. Alien warriors were compared to fashion models, alien monuments turned into bathroom decorations, alien speeches remixed into dance songs. What was meant as terror became endless entertainment. The empire could not escape the cycle. The harder they tried to dominate, the louder humanity laughed. Still, the sense of dread never left the world. At night, people stared at the alien ships glittering faintly against the stars. They looked like silent gods waiting to strike. Children asked their parents if tomorrow the world would burn. Lovers held each other tighter. Soldiers wrote last letters in secret. The laughter was real, but beneath it, the fear was real too. Humans laughed, not because they did not feel fear, but because they refused to give it power. The laughter was rebellion, and rebellion was survival. Then came the first direct strike, not at Earth, but at the moon. Alien beams sliced into the lunar surface, leaving scars of glowing glass that could be seen from Earth. Telescopes captured the devastation. Cities gasped. Silence fell for a moment. Fear surged. At last, but then voices began again, turning the destruction into another joke. People declared the empire had given the moon a new haircut. Others claimed it was free landscaping once again. Humor drowned fear. Once again, the empire failed to dominate. The alien flagship commanders raged. Their fists slammed against tables. Soldiers trembled. They had burned moons. They had crushed empires. But these humans laughed at everything. It was impossible, unthinkable. The emperor himself remained silent, but his eyes burned with fury. He had faced rebellions before and crushed them with ease, but never had he faced laughter, the most alien weapon of all on Earth. The technician who first heard the signal watched the sky. He listened to every transmission. He recorded every pulse and every hidden code. One night he leaned back and whispered to himself, "They do not know what they have done. They came to conquer us, but they may have awakened something they cannot fight. Laughter spreads faster than fear." And now it is everywhere. Across the planet, people continued to mock, yet in their hearts they knew the day would come when the Empire's patience ended, when the warships would open fire for real and fire would rain from the heavens. But until that day, they laughed, they prepared, they resisted in their own strange human way. The Empire had expected obedience and instead found defiance dressed as humor. And that defiance was the seed of a war that would shake the galaxy. The Empire finally decided that words and shows of power were not enough. If fear could not be planted from a distance, then they would step closer. They would face humanity in person for the first time. The order spread through their fleets. Prepare the envoys. Soldiers prepare the stage for the meeting at the edge of space. It was not an invitation, it was a demand. A message shot across the world. Coordinates were given. A neutral station on the border of the system would host the first and only chance. For peace on Earth, government-scrambled leaders argued for hours. Who should go? Who could face the Empire without trembling? Who could stand in the shadow of alien rulers and still speak with strength? They chose a mixture. Soldiers, politicians, scientists. Translators, all sworn to secrecy, all sworn to stand for humanity, not as slaves but as equals. Their ships launched quietly from hidden bases, slipping into orbit under the gaze of alien warships. The world held its breath as the first human delegation left the cradle of Earth and traveled toward the stars. The station chosen by the Empire was a strange structure. It did not belong to humans nor to the Empire. It was ancient, built by some forgotten race, a relic left adrift at the edge of the system. Its halls were vast. Its windows opened to the endless dark. The alien envoys arrived first, their ships docking like predators curling around prey. They filled the station with their presence, soldiers in shining armor, diplomats in robes of silver and gold, their faces sharp, their voices low with disdain. They believed the humans would arrive, trembling, ready to bow, ready to beg. But when the human ships docked and the delegation stepped out, the air changed. They did not bow. They did not whisper. They walked with steady steps, though fear pulsed inside every heart. Their leader, a woman with calm eyes, looked upon the aliens and smiled. Not in reverence, but in something close to amusement. She extended a hand, a gesture of greeting, not of submission. The alien envoy recoiled as if insulted, his voice sharp. You stand before the Empire. You stand before eternity. You must kneel, but the humans did not kneel. They sat calmly at the table, their faces unreadable. The meeting began. The aliens spoke first. Their words polished cold, filled with threats and promises. Kneel and humanity will live. Resist and humanity will be ash. They spoke of empires stretching across galaxies, of fleets beyond counting of worlds, crushed under their heel. They listed laws that humans would obey, tributes that humans would pay, lives that humans would give. But as the words went on, something shifted. The humans did not cry. They did not beg. Instead, one of them chuckled quietly. Another smirked. The leader leaned forward and said in a steady voice, "Forgive me, but do your robes always shine like that? Is it not uncomfortable to wear so much jewelry in space?" The alien envoy froze. His speech broken, his face dark with insult. He hissed, "These are the symbols of power, of rule, of divine right." But the human replied casually, "They look like costumes from an old movie back on Earth." The delegates exchanged glances, hiding their laughter. The Empire's face turned red with fury. The talks continued. The aliens tried again, laying down their terms, their threats, their eternal dominance. But every attempt was met with strange questions. Do your tentacles ever get stuck in those chairs? How long does it take you to polish your crowns? What happens if two emperors wear the same robe? Each question absurd, each one cutting through the Empire's carefully crafted dignity. The aliens shifted in their seats, their pride crumbling under ridicule for the first time in memory. They were not feared, they were mocked. Back on Earth, the feeds of the meeting leaked. Though the Empire tried to block them, the humans had their ways. Soon billions watched as their representatives turned the Empire's grandeur into a comedy show. Entire populations laughed as their leaders stood unbroken, unbowed, joking in the face of gods. The laughter spread faster than light. Morale soared across the planet. People who had trembled now grinned. Children cheered. Soldiers felt strength flow through them. If their leaders could laugh in the Empire's face, then so could they. The aliens on the station grew more furious with each passing hour, their threats louder. Their voices sharper, but the humans did not flinch. The envoy slammed his fist on the table, shouting, "You dare insult the eternal throne! You dare mock the greatest power in the galaxy!" The human leader leaned back and simply said, "Yes," and the room erupted in muffled laughter. The alien soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons, but the Emperor's command was clear. No violence yet. The Empire wanted submission, not blood, not yet. As the talks dragged on, cracks appeared in the Empires. The humans noticed the nervous glances between alien aides, the way their voices shook when mocked, the way their robes seemed less grand under the glare of human amusement. Power built on fear was fragile, and laughter was breaking it peace. By peace, the aliens had come expecting trembling worship. Instead, they left with humiliation, their words empty, their authority crumbling. When the meeting ended, the human delegation walked back to their ships, calm, steady, even smiling behind them. The alien envoys seethed in rage. Their pride shattered their report. To the Emperor would be filled with shame. The humans had not only resisted, they had laughed in the very face of the Empire, and the galaxy would not forget. Back on Earth, the people celebrated. The broadcast of the meeting played across every screen. The sight of aliens fuming, while humans joked, became the greatest entertainment in history. Entire theaters played the footage. Crowds filled stadiums to watch again and again. The Empire had tried to dominate, but had become a spectacle. The humans had turned first contact into a joke, and in that joke they found unity. But in the cold halls of the Empire, there was no laughter. The Emperor listened in silence, his eyes dark, his fists clenched. He had ruled through fear for millennia. He had broken countless worlds with a single word. But these humans, these strange, defiant creatures, had mocked his envoys to his face. He rose from his throne, and his voice shook the hall. "Prepare. The fleets prepare the armies. The time for games is over. They will kneel, or they will burn." Far from Earth, the Empire's war machines stirred. Legions of soldiers marched, ships prepared, weapons glowed with deadly light. The Emperor's pride had been wounded, and pride was more dangerous than hunger or greed. Humanity had won a victory in words and laughter, but it had also sealed its fate. The Empire would return, not with speeches, not with robes, not with crowns, but with fire and steel. The galaxy itself would soon watch the battle between fear and laughter. And on Earth, the people kept laughing yet in the quiet of the night, when the skies glimmered with alien ships and the air carried the echo of threats. Some wondered how long laughter could protect them, how long before the Empire unleashed its fury, how long before the stars themselves fell silent. The fleets of the Galactic Empire no longer drifted in silence. They moved with purpose, with fury. The Emperor's command had been given, and every ship carried it like fire in their cores. Humanity had mocked them, humiliated them before the galaxy, and now punishment would fall. The Empire had crushed countless worlds before, and each time fear had paved the way. But with Earth, fear had failed, so the Empire decided to replace fear with brute force on Earth. The people saw the change. The alien ships no longer just hung above like silent judges. They began maneuvers, tightening their formations, glowing with energy weapons, charging faint blue pulses, humming across the night sky. Telescopes revealed movement within the fleets, smaller crafts darting like insects preparing for battle. Governments knew it would only be a matter of time before the first strike, but still, they refused to kneel. In Washington, the president addressed his generals. "The enemy will not stop. They will come with everything they have. We cannot match their power, but we can resist. We can show them that humanity does not bow." In Moscow, commanders reviewed missile systems, knowing full well their weapons could not reach the alien ships in Beijing. Scientists worked without rest, trying to hack into alien transmissions in Berlin. Engineers built prototypes of shields too fragile, too late yet. Hope flickered in each corner, because somehow laughter had kept them alive this long, and laughter had given them courage. Then the Empire struck, not with the final blow, but with fire meant to terrify. Beams of plasma rained down on the ocean, boiling. Water into steam waves rose like mountains, crashing against coasts. Cities trembled, power grids flickered, satellites burned. Yet when the people saw the Empire's attempt at terror, something unexpected happened again. The fear twisted into jokes. Comedians declared the aliens were just boiling soup. Late-night hosts laughed that humanity was being given a free sauna, even as governments panicked. Ordinary people shared videos edited with cartoon sound effects. Laughter spread again. The Empire's attempt to shatter spirit only hardened it. The Emperor was furious from his throne. He demanded escalation, burn their machines, destroy their armies, crush their spirit. But his commanders reported the same strange effect every strike turned into comedy. Every attempt at terror became a joke. Entire legions of alien soldiers sent messages back, of human voices flooding their comms, mocking them, insulting them, laughing in their ears. The soldiers lost focus, their discipline cracked, they fired. Wildly, they argued with each other. They had been trained to face screams and begging, not laughter. So humanity turned laughter into warfare. They realized that humor was not just defiance. It was a weapon. Soldiers on the ground broadcast jokes into alien frequencies. Comedians streamed shows directly into the Empire's channels. Internet users hacked transmissions, filling them with endless loops of mockery. Everywhere the aliens turned, they heard laughter. They saw parody, their mighty war. Machines became memes. Their leaders became cartoons. Their empire became a stage. And they were the clowns. In New York, giant screens were set up where people shouted jokes into microphones that connected directly to alien broadcasts. In Paris, musicians turned alien speeches into dance music played so loudly it echoed through the streets. In Tokyo, holograms of aliens wearing ridiculous costumes were projected onto skyscrapers. The Empire's intimidation was drowned in a storm of ridicule there. Image shattered their reputation, crumbling even among their own soldiers. But still the war grew darker. Alien fleets fired real shots, not just warnings. Entire human bases were destroyed. Ships in orbit ripped apart. Thousands died. The laughter faltered. For a moment, as smoke filled skies and cities crumbled, but then even in the ashes, people found ways to mock one group of survivors, painted clown faces on the wreckage of alien drones. Soldiers marched with banners saying, "Bow this," painted on sheets. Civilians refused to cower in silence. They used humor like armor, hiding their fear behind smiles and laughter. The technician who had first heard the alien signal sat at his console, his face pale, his hands shaking as transmissions of destruction filled the air. Yet even he laughed through the pain when alien commanders shouted "kneel" in rage, their voices broken by human interference. He realized something vital. The Empire was not just fighting humans, they were fighting their own crumbling. Image, their aura of invincibility, was gone, and without it, they were weaker than anyone imagined. Far away in the Empire's heart, other species watched the humans' defiance. They had lived under the Empire's boot for centuries, trembling in fear. But now they saw something they had never seen before. Creatures who refused to kneel, who turned fear into laughter. Whispers spread across conquered worlds. If humans could mock the Empire, why couldn't they? Two small rebellions began, sparks that might one day become flames. The Emperor, however, refused to believe his reign could falter. He ordered a full invasion. Legions of soldiers prepared to land, fleets armed for total war. But even as they moved, humanity adapted faster. Soldiers equipped with speakers blasted recordings of laughter into the battlefield. Drones painted with grinning faces flew into alien formations. Psychological warfare on a scale no empire had ever faced before. The aliens grew disoriented, confused, enraged. Some even dropped their weapons, screaming at the sound of endless jokes mocking their emperor, their empire, their very existence. And in the chaos, humanity fought back with real weapons too. Missiles launched from hidden bases. Jets darted across the skies. Hacking teams slipped into alien systems broadcasting jokes into their navigation codes. Alien ships spun out of control, colliding with each other as laughter echoed in their cockpits. The war was bloody, yes. Humans died by the thousands. But the Empire was shaken in a way it had never been before there. Perfect machine of fear was rusting. Breaking under the weight of ridicule on the battlefield, a young human soldier raised his voice over the comms. He told a joke, simple, childish, but it spread through every channel, both human and alien, within minutes. Soldiers laughed. Even in combat, alien warriors froze, their morale cracking. The humans pushed forward, shouting not just battle cries but jokes. Humor and defiance merged into one strange, unstoppable force. The Empire's strength came from obedience and silence, but the humans gave them noise, endless noise filled with mockery and resistance. The Emperor heard reports of ships lost, not because of superior firepower, but because of laughter. Soldiers abandoning posts, refusing orders, entire squads. Refusing to fight rather than endure the constant humiliation. He raged against his council, demanding explanations, but none could explain how a primitive world with no super weapons, no vast fleets, had managed to cripple the greatest army in the galaxy with nothing but words and humor. Back on Earth, the people understood that the war was far from over. Cities burned, oceans boiled, skies filled with fire, but still they laughed, because as long as they laughed, they were not beaten. Laughter became a battle cry. Laughter became a shield. Laughter became the first true weapon humanity had forged against the Galactic Empire, and the Empire had no answer. The technician looked up at the stars, his console buzzing with signals, alien voices, filled with rage and despair, human voices filled with humor and hope. He whispered to himself, they thought fear was unbreakable, but laughter breaks everything, even gods. And so the war continued. The Empire with fleets of fire, humanity with jokes, and defiance, two forces colliding across the stars. One ancient and proud, the other young and reckless, the outcome uncertain, the cost heavy, but one truth already clear. The day the Empire tried to conquer Earth was the day fear lost its crown and laughter rose to take its place. Across the galaxy, whispers spread faster than ships, faster than weapons, faster than fear. Planets that had once bowed to the Galactic Empire began to murmur questions. Questions that had never been asked aloud before. If humans could laugh at the Empire, then why could they not? Laughter was a strange thing for many species, a noise without reason, a sound tied to joy or defiance, and yet it spread like fire. Every intercepted broadcast from Earth carried it. Every alien soldier who returned from the battlefield carried it in their trembling voice. They spoke of humans who mocked death, who mocked war, who mocked the Emperor himself, and lived in the vast halls of the Empire's capital. The Emperor's council gathered their robes, glittering, their faces pale. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's rule seemed uncertain. Reports stacked higher and higher, fleets stalled, rebellions growing, outposts silent, entire garrisons refusing to fight because the laughter had broken them. The Emperor's voice thundered, enough, we are gods, we are eternal. No laughter will undo us. But his words echoed hollow even to his own ears. On a mining world of the Empire, far from the core, enslaved workers heard the human broadcasts smuggled through hidden channels. They laughed quietly at first, afraid, then louder. Soon, guards tried to silence them, but the laughter grew uncontrollable. The workers refused to pick up their tools. They laughed in the faces of their masters, and the guards, who had once inspired terror, now trembled, unsure whether to punish or to flee. One world after another began to shift. Small uprisings sparked with jokes painted on walls, caricatures of the Emperor's face drawn with Exaggerated features, entire cities covered in laughter before a single shot was fired on Earth. Humanity watched in awe, their networks flooded with messages from alien rebels, small voices reaching out across the void, saying, "You have shown us where you have given us courage." Some asked for help, others simply sent thanks. Humanity realized their fight was no longer theirs alone, it was becoming something larger, a war not just for Earth, but for freedom itself. Still, the Empire struck back. Fleets descended upon rebellious worlds, burning cities, enslaving populations. But the pattern was broken, for every world crushed. Two more began to stir. Laughter spread even through the Empire's own citizens. Alien soldiers sent to Earth returned, changed, haunted by the sound of humor in battle. Some deserted, some muttered forbidden jokes in their barracks. The chain of obedience began to crack. No longer perfect, no longer eternal. On Earth, generals and leaders studied the reports they saw. What was happening? The Empire's armor was cracking from within. This was the moment to push harder. They turned their strategy into something new, not only to fight with weapons, but to amplify the laughter. They built satellites that broadcast human jokes across alien frequencies. They created endless loops of mockery that spread through enemy systems. Comedians became war heroes, their words sharper than blades. The battlefield stretched far beyond Earth. Now it stretched into minds, into hearts, into the very soul of the galaxy. In the Empire's council chambers, arguments broke out. One faction demanded total annihilation of Earth, burn it to ash, so that laughter would end. Another warned that such destruction would only make humans into martyrs. Still others whispered of peace negotiations, though they feared to speak it too loudly. The Emperor listened, his fury boiling. He swore the humans would be crushed. Yet in his silence, a shadow of doubt crept in. Meanwhile, in the streets of Earth cities battered by fire and smoke, people refused despair. Murals of laughter covered broken walls. Children played games pretending to be aliens mocked by humans. Soldiers carried recordings of jokes into battle, blasting them from speakers as they fired weapons. Sometimes laughter was all they had left, and yet it made them strong. The more the Empire fought, the more humanity laughed, and the more the galaxy noticed. On a distant world, a governor of the Empire stood before his people, demanding obedience. But as he spoke, someone from the crowd shouted a human joke. It was translated through smuggled broadcasts. At first the crowd was silent, then one person laughed, then another, until the governor's speech was drowned in waves of laughter. He ordered executions, but even the soldiers hesitated. Some laughed themselves. Rebellion had begun without swords, without fleets, with nothing but the sound of laughter. The technician who had first heard the alien signal sat again at his console, eyes red from sleepless nights. He monitored transmissions across the stars, and he saw the shift clearly. Where once there had been fear and silence, now there was chaos and humor and resistance. He realized humanity had started a chain reaction that could not be undone, he whispered. They cannot stop it, even if they kill us all. It is too late. Alien fleets clashed with rebels, battles erupted across systems. But unlike the past, the Empire could not keep control. Entire squadrons defected. Some planets declared independence openly for the first time in centuries. Laughter gave them courage to speak what had always been buried. The Emperor ordered purges, entire populations burned, but even in ashes, graffiti of laughter remained symbols. Carved on ruins, memes, smuggled in data streams, the spirit refused to die. On Earth, leaders debated what to do. Some urged caution, fearing that the Empire would unleash its full wrath. Others argued that this was their chance to strike, to turn rebellion into revolution. Finally, they agreed humanity would stand with those who resisted. Humanity would become the symbol not just of survival, but of defiance. Messages were sent into the void, not of surrender, but of solidarity. We will fight, we will laugh, we will not kneel. And across the stars, Those words were heard. The emperor sat upon his throne, hearing the reports world after world slipping from his grasp. Soldiers refusing orders, laughter spreading even into the palace itself, servants whispering, forbidden jokes behind their hands. His rage was endless, but inside he knew the truth the empire was breaking. The humans had broken it, not with fleets, not with power, but with something the empire had never understood. Spirit back on Earth nights were filled with fire as alien fleets still attacked. But each morning survivors gathered and rebuilt. They laughed as they cleared rubble. They mocked the aliens even as they buried their dead, because they knew if they stopped laughing, even for a moment, the Empire would win. And so laughter became not just a weapon, but a lifeline. In orbit, a human pilot flew through the wreckage of another battle, her ship barely holding together alien fighters closing in instead of a last battle cry. She broadcast a human song filled with humor across all channels. Her enemies hesitated, confused, their discipline cracked. She escaped through the chaos. Laughter had saved her life. The technician listened to that transmission, tears in his eyes. He understood. Now laughter was not simply defiance. It was freedom itself. It was the sound of beings choosing not to bow, not to surrender, and once that sound had spread, no empire could silence it forever. And so the galaxy shifted, the empire weakened rebellions, rising humanity scarred but unbroken laughter. Echoing louder and louder across the stars, the war was far from over. Blood still ran, battles still raged, but already the future was clear. The emperor's throne was shaking, and the sound that would bring it down was not the roar of cannons, but the unstoppable sound of laughter. The emperor sat alone in his great chamber, the ceiling carved from black stone, the walls glowing faintly with the power of machines older than memory. His throne stood high above all others, and yet he felt smaller than he had ever felt before. He had ruled for centuries. His word was law, his command unbreakable, his empire eternal. But now, across the galaxy, the sound of laughter echoed louder than his decrees, louder than his threats, louder even than the screams of those he burned into silence. He clenched his hands upon the arms of his throne, his nails cutting into the stone, his eyes burning with rage. But in the silence he knew fear had touched him for the first time. Outside the palace fleets gathered, ships of silver steel and fire filling the void like a storm, waiting to be unleashed. The Empire had summoned every loyal fleet, every commander who still bowed to the Emperor. They stood ready to crush Earth, to burn its people, to erase laughter itself from the stars. Yet even among those fleets, whispers spread. Soldiers spoke in secret, repeating human jokes, mocking their leaders behind closed doors. Laughter slipped through discipline like cracks in a dam, and though they stood armed, their spirits wavered on Earth. The skies still bore the scars of war, clouds of ash and trails of burning wreckage, but the people did not bow. They rebuilt, they painted walls with mocking faces of the Emperor. They laughed as they repaired their cities. They sang songs of defiance late at night. The generals met with leaders, their maps lit by dim lamps, fleets scattered, forces strained, and yet they smiled because they knew something had changed. They were no longer alone. Entire systems across the galaxy were rising rebellions, burning brighter with each passing day. In the underground war rooms, voices argued one side, demanded preparation for annihilation. The Empire would send its greatest fleet to destroy them. The other side urged attack. If the Empire's throne was shaking, then now was the time to strike. The technician, who had first heard the alien signal, stood in the corner, silent, his eyes tired, his voice steady. He said, "They are afraid of us, not of our weapons, not of our numbers, but of our spirit. We must not give them silence. We must give them more laughter, more defiance, more truth." And at last the room fell quiet, and they agreed. Humanity would not wait to be destroyed. Humanity would carry the fight into the heart of the Empire. The decision was made. Fleets were gathered, battered ships patched with scavenged parts, fighters painted with mocking symbols, carriers filled with soldiers who carried not just guns but recordings of laughter. Humanity prepared to strike. The emperor heard of this, and his rage turned into a cold fire. He ordered every loyal fleet to protect the capital. He ordered entire sectors purged to send a message. But each act of cruelty only fed the rebellion more. Every world burned. Became a symbol, every massacre, a spark that set another people aflame. The emperor himself rose from his throne. For the first time in decades, he walked through his palace halls, his voice booming. He gathered his soldiers, his commanders, his people. He delivered a speech carried across the empire. He spoke of human weakness. He spoke of eternal power. He promised destruction and chains and endless suffering for Earth. His voice roared like thunder. But when his words reached the stars, they were met not with silence, not with fear, but with laughter. Whole planets laughed, entire crowds mocked his threats. Comedians twisted his words into jokes. Memes of the emperor spread faster than his orders. His greatest speech became the greatest comedy in history. And though his rage was boundless, he could not silence it in the capital city of the empire. Fear still ruled streets lined with soldiers, towers filled with weapons, but even there, small groups of rebels laughed in the shadows they painted. Walls with human symbols, they whispered human jokes, they looked to the skies and dreamed of freedom. They were ready, waiting for the signal that humanity would come, and the signal came when human fleets emerged from the void, battered but unbroken, carrying their laughter across enemy channels. The first clash was brutal. Alien warships filled the void, their weapons cutting through space. Human ships burned their hulls, cracking. But still they fought. Every time an alien broadcast a threat, humans replied with jokes. Every time an alien demanded surrender, humans laughed, and somehow the battles turned in their favor. Not by strength, not by numbers, but because the Empire's soldiers could not hold their spirit. Their shots missed their lines, faltered, their voices shook, because deep down they feared not human weapons, but human defiance. Inside the capital, the emperor watched the battles unfold, his fury boiling as one fleet after another wavered. Some defected, joining the rebels, others simply fled. He shouted orders. He demanded loyalty, but fewer and fewer obeyed. He realized his empire was slipping away, not by conquest, but by ridicule. His enemies were laughing and his people were listening. At last, the emperor himself stepped onto the command deck of his personal ship, a massive vessel larger than cities, bristling with weapons forged to crush entire worlds. He declared that if none of his fleets could win, then he himself would destroy humanity. He broadcast across the stars, his voice shaking with fury. I am eternal, I am your God, I will not be mocked. But as his words spread, humanity answered as one, not with weapons, not with silence, but with laughter. Billions of voices carried across every channel, mocking the emperor, ridiculing him, turning his fury into farce. The battle around the capital reached its peak. Human ships swarmed, rebel fleets rose to join them. Alien systems, once silent, now screamed with defiance. The emperor's great ship opened fire, tearing through enemies. But each shot was answered by more laughter, each wound by more defiance. Even as human ships burned, they broadcast jokes into the void. Even as rebels fell, they mocked the emperor's throne until his fury became desperation. The technician sat at his console once more, his hands trembling, as he listened to the chaos of signals, laughter, battles, screams, and in that storm he heard it, the crack of the empire breaking. He whispered to himself, the emperor has already lost, because once laughter begins, it cannot be killed. The emperor gave his final command. He ordered his ship to descend upon Earth itself to burn it to ash, but his own soldiers hesitated, his captains faltered, some laughed openly on the bridge. His power was crumbling. From within his throne had turned to dust around him. He screamed, but no one obeyed as rebels swarmed his flagship. Human fleets closed in laughter filled the channels, louder than his orders, louder than his rage. The final clash came above the empires. Capital world. Human fighters pierced the defenses. Rebels poured into the skies. The Emperor's ship unleashed its weapons, but was struck again and again, fire tearing through its massive hull. Yet even as it burned, the Emperor remained upon his throne, his voice roaring across failing systems. "I am eternal, I am eternal." But outside, the laughter drowned him, and with a final blaze, the great ship fell broken into the skies of his own world, its wreckage burning its fire, lighting the rebellion. Across the galaxy on Earth, the people watched the flames on distant broadcasts. They cheered, they laughed, they wept. The Empire was not yet dead, but its heart had been broken. The Emperor's last stand had become his greatest humiliation, and humanity knew the war was not over, but the future was already theirs. Laughter had toppled gods, laughter had broken chains, and across the galaxy, the sound echoed louder than ever before, a sound no tyrant could silence, a sound that promised freedom. The wreckage of the Emperor's ship still burned in the skies of his capital world, shards of metal falling like dying stars across the city. Below, the people who once bowed in silence now stood in the open, staring upward in awe and disbelief. The symbol of power that had ruled them for centuries was gone. The unshakable throne shattered, the invincible god defeated in fire and smoke. Yet as the sky burned, a new sound rose, not screams, not fear, but laughter. First a whisper, then a roar spreading through the streets, spreading across the airwaves, spreading into the hearts of billions. Human ships hovered above the planet, their hulls scarred, their engines coughing fire. But they held formation, proud and unbroken. They broadcast across every channel, their voices carrying to the farthest edges of the Empire. They said, "The Emperor is gone, his throne is ash, you are free." And then they laughed, a deep rolling laughter that swept across the stars. It reached rebel ships fighting in distant systems. It reached slaves hidden in underground tunnels. It reached even the soldiers who once served the Emperor, and in every place that heard it, chains broke. In the capital city, people tore down statues of the Emperor, their claws and hands ripping the stone apart, piece by piece. They painted human faces upon the ruins. They scrawled jokes across palace walls. Soldiers dropped their weapons, some laughing, some crying. Whole units defected to the rebellion in the streets. Human soldiers walked side by side with alien rebels, cheered by crowds once too afraid to speak. The Empire had not vanished, but its heart was gone, and with its heart gone, its body was already falling apart on Earth. The celebrations shook every city, fireworks bursting across night skies, screens lit up with images of the Emperor's fall. Comedians mocked his last words. New songs rose, mocking the great tyrant as a clown. The people who once feared destruction now laughed into the night, their voices carrying across oceans and mountains, their hope stronger than ever. Generals gathered in war rooms, listening to the waves of rebellion spreading across alien systems. They knew battles still raged, fleets still threatened, but they smiled because they had already won. In deep space, rebel fleets linked with human ships. They shared supplies, they shared fuel, they shared laughter. They spoke in dozens of languages, but all carried the same message: the Empire is broken. We are free. In secret transmissions, leaders of alien worlds contacted Earth, pledging loyalty, not as slaves but as equals. They asked for help, they asked for guidance, they asked to learn the secret weapon that had brought the Empire low, and humanity gave it freely. They said, "We do not rule, we do not demand. We only laugh, and we will laugh together." But the war was not yet finished. Pockets of resistance remained, loyal governors declaring themselves new emperors, fleets still swearing vengeance, worlds still chained by fear. The last loyalists gathered in clusters across the stars, desperate to hold what power they could, and humanity knew they must strike before those pieces could rise again. So the plan was made not of conquest, not of domination, but of freedom. They would spread their message further than ever before. They would bring laughter to the darkest corners of the empire until not a single chain remained. The technician sat once more at his console, tired eyes, staring at the streams of signals, laughter jokes, songs, all spreading through the void. He whispered, "This is bigger than Earth now. This is the galaxy rising. One spark started it, one joke carried it, and now nothing can stop it." His voice trembled, but there was joy in his tone. He had been the first to hear the Emperor's command to kneel. Now he was the first to hear the galaxy laugh together. In the outer colonies, the Emperor's governors tried to restore order. They executed rebels. They burned cities. They broadcast threats, but each act only brought more laughter. Every speech became comedy. Every show of force became a farce. Rebellion spread like fire from one world to the next. Ships, once loyal, turned their guns on their masters' statues, fell faster than they could be raised, and everywhere human voices joined alien voices, mocking the Empire until its symbols turned to dust. The last true fleet of the Empire gathered at the edge of the galaxy, thousands of ships surrounding one final stronghold. They swore they would avenge the Emperor. They swore they would burn Earth. Yet even among them, cracks appeared: officers who whispered jokes, soldiers who smuggled recordings of human laughter, entire crews who defected before the battle even began. When at last the rebel and human fleets met them in the void, it was not a battle of destruction, but of collapse. The Empire's ships fired their guns, but their hearts were gone, one by one. They surrendered one by one. They turned against each other until the last fleet fell without glory, without honor. The capital of the Empire, once the seat of unbreakable power, became the meeting place of new voices. Leaders of dozens of species gathered. They're not under threat, but in hope. Humanity stood among them not as rulers, but as equals. Their ships still scarred, their weapons still few, but their spirit unbroken. They spoke of a new order, not of empire, but of unity, not of fear, but of freedom. They said laughter will be our shield, defiance will be our sword. We will never kneel again. And the galaxy listened, and the galaxy agreed. In the streets of that world, crowds gathered to watch the humans walk among them. Some reached out to touch their hands, some laughed through tears, some shouted their own jokes in broken human words, and the humans laughed with them. For the first time in memory, the capital was filled not with silence and fear, but with the noise of joy. The Emperor's a palace stood in ruins, but from its stones children built new games. From its halls, musicians played new songs. From its ashes, the galaxy rose again. Back on Earth, the people watched these events with wide eyes and bright smiles. They saw alien children laughing with human children. They saw cities once bound in chains, painted with colors. They saw fleets once feared, now carrying supplies and food, and they knew they had done what no one believed possible. They had turned the greatest empire in history into a joke. They had broken chains, not with bombs, not with fear, but with laughter. And in doing so, they had changed forever. The technician sat again in silence, staring at the endless signals flowing across the stars, messages of hope, of freedom, of laughter. He thought of the first night he heard the Emperor's command to kneel. He thought of how small humanity had felt then. And now he thought of how the galaxy laughed because of them. He whispered, "Humanity met the Empire and did not bow. Humanity laughed, and the galaxy laughed with them. And so it ended not with fire, not with silence, but with laughter. Laughter in the streets of alien cities, laughter across the oceans of Earth, laughter in the void of space where fleets once clashed, laughter that echoed into the future, a reminder that no throne, no empire, no tyrant can withstand the power of those who dare to laugh."